I'm an open book. Like, I just want people to learn and for their life to be paved with a lighter, happier path than maybe mine has. And so, like, that's why I love to share what I've learned in culinary school and as a chef. So I can just, uplift people's life a little more than maybe mine was when they were at their spot.
Yeah. Now, perfect place to start. Look at you spoon feeding me. She runs a podcast. Uh, I I did want to talk about that. Now, from
Yeah.
what I know about my husband comes from a family of chefs, and from what I can tell, and from watching the show, The Bear and stuff, I'm like, ooh, high stress kind of environment.
Yeah.
For any of the audience who maybe hasn't followed you or knows your journey, would you be able to kind of give us a little bit of an overview of that journey into culinary school and becoming a chef and how that parallels with your wellness journey? Is that
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at the food that you get on your plate when you go out to a more healthy restaurant or cafe, um, you think that's exactly what it is. But so much goes into our food. And I think we forget that sometimes when we eat out. We know when we're home with our parents or our grandparents and we can taste the love in their food, that when they prepare something and you try the family recipe at home, it's just not the same because of their energy that goes into it. So I think we often forget that's happening at restaurants as well. The line cooks and the people that are preparing the food, their energy is going into our food. So we want them to be living in a happy, joyful, positive work environment because we're going to eat the outcome of that. So it is interesting when we watch TV shows like The Bear because most restaurants are operating in a really high stress space. So I think, and this is very much why I went into the culinary world, I think there's opportunity for growth there. And I went to culinary school simply because I just wanted to feel good in my body every day. I was so tired of going to all these different doctors, spending thousands of dollars, and never getting to the root cause of my chronic inflammation, my yo-yo weight gain and weight loss. And just stomach pains, just chronic stomach pains in particular spots, and I just didn't want to live like this anymore. And it all started when I was 16. And by the time I was in my early 30s, I just thought, enough's enough. I'm in this body. I know what I'm feeling. And I feel like if I was equipped with the proper tools, I could heal myself. And so I went out and found a culinary school that had just as many classes in a classroom with dietitians and teaching me holistic nutrition as in a kitchen, actually learning how to properly prepare foods, learning the old world methods, when to wash grains, when to soak and sprout things. I wanted to learn the real stuff that, granted, I could have bought a lot of cookbooks and worked my way through, but I just wanted to dive in and learn it all and upgrade my personal life. And then when I exited culinary school, I thought, wow, like that was finishing school. That's actually what I should have done before college or right after I graduated college. They just gave me tools for life. I can't gatekeep this. Like, nobody should have to spend a ton of money, take 8 months off their life to learn these life skills, like how to buy eggs at the grocery store. It's kind of complicated right now. So that's kind of how I started. And, it's just wanting to share the information that I learn as well as, help other people make healthy, delicious meals at home.
okay, a few questions because amazing. Love that. From like 16 to 30, was there anything else at play, or was it just inflammation, or was it kind of because I know I don't want to say a trend because it's not. I think it's that we're kind of like waking up and realizing sometimes contraceptive pills can have issues with this. I am actually going through a gut health journey now. I have depression and anxiety. And so I kind of reached a plateau with talk therapy. And now I'm kind of dipping my toe in some more holistic health things just because I feel like there's some
Yeah.
planes that are not really working spiritually and emotionally. And I do, that's where I get my severe bloating. And so, and the same thing, upset tummy. And whilst I don't have IBS or anything kind of, I'm like, something's not right. That's where my anxiety goes. So I'm very, excuse my ignorance, very new into kind of this world
Yeah.
of, oh, it's all connected. Um, so yeah, I guess I asked that to say, would you mind sharing a little bit more about kind of what that chunk of time looked like and what you were experiencing?
Yeah. So we
Got
have
you
our
to that
physical.
frustration point, which I feel so many people are at.
Yeah, and the frustration points, we are on we are on a ride. So it's like you get to a place where you have peace with your body and peace with your mind, peace with the physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental body. And then something shifts again in our life. And then we shift back to balance, and then it shifts again. So it is a ride. And so at 16, what I realized hindsight was it was emotional. It was past lives. It was like physical trauma in my tissue. It was me unable to express my feelings to certain people and to experiences I was having in my life. It was just holding everything in. And over time, when I had really upgraded the quality of my diet and my lifestyle practices, and certain little knots and pains were still there, and it was always consistently in the same spot, that's when I had to think, God, it's not the food. It's not the physical body. There's nothing that's coming up in blood tests and any work that I'm doing. Like we've checked all those boxes. So it has to be something in the other bodies that we can't see, that we can feel. The spiritual, the emotional, the mental, all the layers of us that we're going to be learning more about, I think, over the next 20 years. And so that's what I had to get into in order to free myself. And I find that's often where I need to go when things come up again, when my digestion gets weird, when I have random weight gain, when I have inflammation in my face. That's usually where I get it. It's usually like, okay, what's going on in my life? Who am I surrounding myself with? What emotions am I not willing to like really cope with right now? What am I holding in? What am I not letting out? How am I overworking myself? It's asking ourselves all the uncomfortable questions that we don't ask, because it's easier just to check Instagram and go on TikTok and play some music in the car and put on a movie and not have to sit with ourselves. And when we do sit with ourselves, we ultimately realize where it's coming from. And then we have to take the steps to let it go or move through it. And then the pain and inflammation goes away. But it doesn't mean that you can't eat healthy and take care of yourself. You have to find a balance to it all.
That's so good. You touched on something. I mean, I have to ask what we should do about buying eggs because I have written it down. I'm like, what are we supposed to do when we buy eggs? So I'll start with that. And what should I be checking when I buy eggs?
Yeah, I literally just walked into the grocery store this morning to get some eggs. So you'll find, there's 10, 12 different brands at the grocery store. So the first thing I look for is regenerative farming. So regenerative is the word I look for, and then I also look for mobile coops, because the whole thing is, how do I get eggs from a chicken that was on a farm, that was let loose on the farm and was actually able to graze all over the grass, eating worms and seeds and whatever it found on the grass. And that coop was rotated around the property. So it's constantly eating a more natural diet. And it's getting outside and being in sun, and it's not being shot up with tons of shots. So like, I'm trying to look for the closest thing to a traditional rural way of raising our chickens. So that's how I start. And then you just start reading the labels. And what you'll usually find, we're not looking for organic, we're not looking for soy free, which those labels are helpful because chickens aren't supposed to eat soy. Chickens aren't supposed to eat grains. Like, that's not what chickens are supposed to eat. But it's not necessarily supposed to be a vegetarian feed. You'll see that a lot on boxes too, vegetarian fed. Well, chickens aren't vegetarians. They eat worms and bugs. So that's a problem if it's vegetarian feed. That means it's locked up in some warehouse and it's giving organic or GMO corn, grain, and soy. So again, you're just constantly going through and trying to find the closest thing that you can get and that you can imagine in your head to just being outside in mobile coops. And then when you nail it down, I find I usually am able to nail it down to one or two brands. When there are two brands, like when I'm traveling and I can't decide which one to choose and I'm not familiar with them, I do the balance test. It's called the balance test, the resonance test. It's like muscle testing. And I just like hold it in my hands or put it against my chest and I close my eyes and I ask the question, like, should I buy these eggs? Are these the right eggs for me? I ask a yes or no question. And I fall forward if it's a yes, I fall back if it's a no, and I stay completely completely solid in the middle if it's a maybe. And I use that as my gut check. And that's how I make my decision.
How long have you been doing that? And do you do it with everything?
I do it whenever I can't make a decision. And I do it in the grocery store. I do it shopping. I'll do it anywhere. I don't care. I don't care what anybody thinks when they see me do it. I
When
do
did
the
you
gut check,
start?
and I've been doing the gut check probably since like 2010.
Did you just make it up or is this a real thing?
No, I went to a conference in Maryland outside Washington D.C., like an organic and wellness conference in 2010, and one of the practitioners taught us how to do that. And they taught us how to do it in even more depth. So like if you really want to get super clear when you do it, you need to get a magnet and you take the magnet and you kind of clear yourself afterwards. And then you kind of reset and you can do it with anything. You can do it with thoughts and ideas. You can write things down on paper. If you're trying to process an emotion, a feeling, an event, I'm trying to figure out how you're supposed to move forward with somebody.
Yeah.
You can write it down on a piece of paper and hold it against you and see if that's the right move. I literally use it all the time. Um,
Love that so much.
it's
I'm like,
really helpful because sometimes we have to get out of our head to get the answer and let our body make the decision, right? So, especially when it comes to food, our body needs to make the decision. And that brings us back to like the multiple layers of us, the physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. And I really believe food is the foundation. We get our food right for us, our body, and then everything else starts to fall into place, especially like our mental health and our spiritual health. Like things open up. The heaviness that we're carrying falls away when we get our diet right.
hmm, my gosh, dying to try this. Yeah, I do struggle with like, oh, what does your gut tell you? I'm like, it'll tell me whatever I want it to tell me because my head is quicker and better at it. So I'll be like, I'll manipulate the situation to whatever outcome. Yeah, I don't. My husband's so good at like, he's like, got a gut feeling about this. I'm like, oh, okay, I can mirror that. Yeah, but I don't trust it, which is probably just like I don't use it as much. But
But you would probably trust your body. So that's why I love the testing because the body doesn't lie, right? And that's a lot of things that's happening with disease. Like we'll feel something's off. We'll kind of know something's off, but we make our body scream at us in order to then take action and make changes. So when I am so in my head and I can't trust my gut or mental feelings, I have to find other ways to get the answer. And one of those ways is using my body, you know.
I have a friend who, Shannon, shout out to Shannon. She is at the moment studying, she's doing a process called rewilding. She's kind of trying to understand how our ancestors ate, like seasonally, and she's not outwardly doing this for any purpose, just for her own body to
Mhm.
realign. I wondered if you had any thoughts on that, because in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, like we shouldn't be eating strawberries year round. That's not necessarily how we should have them. I just wondered, yeah, that's a pretty hot take for me. I understand it's probably not in your world, but could you maybe explain the idea of that if you agree with it and how
Yeah. And
adapt?
that's definitely like what I've been really into for a long time. And that's part of why I chose the culinary school I went to, is because that fascinates me, is studying different cultures around the world and seeing how they ate with different seasons. Because I am like the stereotypical American. I'm Heinz 57. I am like so many different cultures. So I have to look at all these different places around the world to see how people were, what they were eating and how they were eating in certain seasons to understand the diet that might be right for me, you
Mm,
know? So that's, I think, really important for people to look at is their ancestry, all of it, and then kind of look all over the world and seeing how they were living through the different seasons. And then that's where we come across so many pickled and canned vegetables for the wintertime and the joy that fruit used to bring people. Like people used to get really excited about peach season and strawberry season and apple season. And then that was it. You really leaned into the season and enjoyed the flavor of it. And then you just had to wait till next year to enjoy it. And there's something really special about that. And I think there is a lot of people that are moving back to it. I know that's what I do when it comes to fruit, just because where I am in Southern California, when I go to the grocery store, so much fruit is covered in wax. And I've had gut health issues for so many years. My thought was like, why am I going to continue to eat food with wax on it when, like, I know I'm having gut issues? I don't know what type of role that's playing, but there's no way that this wax on the apple is going to be good for me. And it's just not possible and reasonable to get all that wax off. So I only buy my fruit at the farmer's market, and I buy it in season, and the apples don't have wax. And I just lean into that season of apples, and I love every minute of it. And then I'm forced to move on to citrus season. And then I move on to stone fruit season. And I get to explore like the plums and the peaches and all the stone fruit, the apricots. So doesn't mean that you don't have learning curves, and like sometimes you have to go and buy like some frozen fruit to make something that you're really craving. But it's worth try. It's everyone should try it.
Mm.
You are going to be surprised and delighted by the flavor changes.
Great segue into kind of your one of your businesses around spices and things. So how did that kind of come about? And is it is it taking everything you like? Yeah, I guess adding flavor. I am again, my ignorance. Cooking is not my thing. It's my husband's thing. I kind
Yeah.
of save myself. I'm a heat and eat kind of gal. But I'm trying to learn and understand it. But the ability that he has to kind of like throw shit in and it works out great is amazing to me. So yeah, I'm curious about this journey into the business of yeah, selling spices and things.
Yeah, so I grew up cooking a lot with my parents, and I loved cooking a few meals myself for myself when I was in high school. And my dad would make our own spice blends. And that's really how it started, is he would make his own spice blends, and then I would put them on chicken and vegetables and steaks when I would cook. And when I went off to college, when I got my first apartment, he didn't buy me any furniture. He didn't buy me anything for my apartment, but he stocked my kitchen for me. And he made sure I had all the spices I needed, all the pots and pans, everything I needed to feed myself, to nourish myself, as well as our family spice blends.
Mm.
And it's just was always in my repertoire. It's always what I used and leaned towards. It's how I season my food. I was never someone that did marinades with all the oils and liquids and sugars. I always did dry rubs because it's just, spices and good quality sea salt. And when I went to culinary school and I learned about how spices are, I think we forget herbs and spices are the concentrated form of the real thing. It's a bunch of cilantro dried and ground. It's a bell pepper dried and ground. These are whole foods that are now concentrated. So they're like many little superfoods, like the ginger and the turmeric dried and ground. It's more potent. So we need to be mindful of what we're using. We need to make sure it's organic, it's not irradiated, that it's just the spices and the sea salt, that there's no citric acid, there's no MSG, there's no anti-caking agents, there's no coloring added to make it look more pretty. All of the stuff that's actually in so many spice blends. And so when I became a personal chef and I needed spice blends to make all these healthy meals for them. And I was going to the store and everything had sugar and MSG and caking agents and just junk in it. I thought, oh, I need to start making my blends for them. So that's what I started doing. And they really enjoyed them. And they asked for some extras for friends. You know how the story goes. And so
Yeah.
I thought, all right, well, I have to make it anyway.
Yeah.
I've been living on these spice blends for 20 years. So why don't I just make bigger batches and share it with others so they can have healthy meals at home?
Did you deviate from your father's original recipe?
No, it is my dad's original recipe for the 11 magic herbs and spices. That's dad's recipe. And then the starseed adobo, which is like the anti-inflammatory turmeric blend, that's my own. He introduced me to the concept of adobo,
Mm.
and I edited and made my blend, and it's the best adobo on the market with the most turmeric out there. It is my favorite.
Uh, I was gonna ask what your like go-to superfood is, or if there was something that all of us should have in our diet that perhaps we don't, is turmeric. the answer in your
I
mind?
love turmeric. Turmeric's great for everything. I feel like when you eat it, it gives you an inner glow, you
Yeah.
know? There's something about it's sunshine in a bottle.
Mm.
And I always have it in the house. And if you're not sure how to use it, like if I'm heating up some bone broth just to sip, I'll put a little turmeric in it. Obviously, when I love like a fish curry and a chicken curry, so I always add a little bit of turmeric. I use my adobo spice blend on my chicken breasts, my chicken thighs, on my eggs. I use it on my potatoes, breakfast potatoes, dinner potatoes, roasted cauliflower, but that has turmeric in it. And if I wasn't using my own adobo spice, I would use another brand's, and I would add extra turmeric in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the ways are endless.
Yeah, I feel like it comes up, and I don't know, I probably need to fact check this, but I did hear something once that one of the reasons that India has such low inflammation per capita, they were equating to the use of turmeric in food. So I don't know if that's factually accurate. I will have to check it. But yeah, I did wonder, as someone who uses turmeric, if the correlation between inflammation is something you had learned as well.
And I think it's not just the turmeric for them. They use a lot of cinnamon. They
Mm.
use a lot of cumin, coriander, and occasionally saffron.
Mm.
So I think it's their use of these concentrated, you
Mm.
know, spices and herbs that are just really revitalizing their body from the inside out.
So good and delicious. I love
And
cozy.
right, like it makes food more interesting. So if you're someone that believes that a healthy meal has to be a baked chicken breast with steamed broccoli and, maybe a sweet potato, or you think you have to do another steamed vegetable, well, like you can add spices. You can
Mhm.
add a dry rub. I don't add oil. I take the chicken breast, I pat it dry really well with paper towels. I put it in a bag. I add a tablespoon of spice. You shake it up really well, and all the spice collects perfectly on the chicken breast. You can do this with a piece of salmon. You can do this with a chicken thigh. You can do it with any piece of meat. For some reason, when you put the
I'm
meat,
literally salivating. I'm like, that sounds delicious. Yeah.
yeah, you have to pat it dry really well. You have to put it in a large plastic baggie, like a large gallon Ziploc. You
Yeah.
add a tablespoon of spice or more. You shake it up. It's like the shake and bake method. And that's how the seasoning gets all around the food, where it looks like it does when you're at a restaurant and you get that perfectly blackened piece of salmon. That's what they did. You can do it yourself at home, and then you just put it in the oven and bake it. And now the food has flavor. It
Yeah.
has antioxidants. There's more health benefits going on. It's more supportive for digestion. And when we experience pleasure with our food, it brings us joy, which makes us healthier and happier. We can't, healthy food doesn't have to be sad. It gets to be happy and joyful. And that will translate into us being happy and joyful. And that's what we're all looking for. So why don't we incorporate that into our meals?
Mm-hmm. You touched on something earlier about your dad kitting out your kitchen, and I had watched some of your stories this morning. I wondered, and realize I'm on the edge of time here. Uh, I wondered if there was one thing that you would encourage Kiwis or anyone listening to invest in their kitchen. Would it be good pots and pans? Would it be spices? Would it be an oil? Like, what would be the top tier thing that would you would encourage?
I love this question, and I'm going to look at my kitchen as we do it.
Okay.
So, pots and pans, if you buy it right the first time, you can have it for life.
Yeah.
So, whether you're doing a enamel Dutch oven like Staub or um, Le Creuset, if you're doing stainless steel pots and pans, if you're buying some really good quality, beautiful clay products, a cast iron skillet, whatever you buy, if you buy it right the first time, you'll have it for 40 years. So don't stress about what it's going to cost you up front, because it's really the long-term value. The next thing is a really good wood cutting board. You should be cutting on wood, not plastic, not glass. Get yourself a good large wood cutting board that stays stable. Get yourself some good kitchen towels. I just use like the nice, like white cotton ones. But get yourself kitchen towels, get one knife that is awesome. Make
Mhm.
sure you buy it in person. Hold it in your hand Make sure you find one that's the right weight for you, that you feel comfortable and safe with it. You need one really good sharp knife. Go from there. Then after that, you need a good bread knife, also known as a serrated knife, and then some kitchen scissors. So start slowly, and build the foundation. And then as you play, you'll figure out the other tools that you want to bring into your space, but quality over quantity every time.
Mm.
And make sure you like the product, how it looks, how it feels. Like,
Yeah.
only bring things into your kitchen that feel right, look right. It's a sacred space. Treat it as such.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm grinning because until my husband came into our life, we're putting wooden chopping boards in the dishwasher, knives in the dishwasher, and he's like, like
I
we
love
got
your husband.
we got like shitty pans and stuff, and he's like, I don't know how to. And he's like, because I guess there's some superstition about buying people knives. Is that correct? You are not.
Oh,
Is it
I
that
don't
you're not
know.
supposed to gift? There's something around like, so he had to buy the knife for him to use at my parents' house. I think you're not supposed to gift it. It's supposed to be a personal journey. Maybe that's a New Zealand superstition.
Oh
I'm
my gosh, I'm going to look this up.
yeah,
Well, it does seem like, if we look at the energetics of that,
yeah,
someone buying you a knife is
a little off. Yeah.
it is a little off. It's like someone buying you a gun, It's like, it is a little
Yeah,
intense. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to look up that superstition. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's something in it, but I think he justified it by like he's buying my parents the knife for him to use to cook because all of
Yeah.
us just not
Yeah.
great. So
No,
it's
that's something I would do for my parents' place, is like show up with my own knife with my name engraved on it. And that's for when Whitney's here.
love that. My last question, something I ask all my guests is, what does your brain look like? If it was a scene, is it a
Oh,
garden? Is it a nightmare basement? Yeah. Is it, yeah, what is it?
the first thing that came up is, I hope it just looks like a heart.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like a cartoon kind of heart?
Yeah, just like a beautiful puffy red heart.
That's great. No further questions. That's a beautiful brain. Lovely. I love that. Yeah. I like your heart brain. That's great. Hey, Whitney, thank you so much. What an absolute pleasure it was talking to you today. If people want to find you, follow you, find some of your products, where can they do that?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Whitney Aronoff, or on TikTok at Whitney Aronoff. And then I also have my brand at both places called Starseed Kitchen. If you want to find the recipes that I actually make for myself and my clients, you can go to starseedkitchen.com. And that's where you can find my organic spice blends. And then if you're ever in Los Angeles, you can stop into any Erewhon location and pick them up there.
Well, and also a plug because you have your own podcast. If people want to learn more about this stuff, give us a bit of an elevator pitch on that.
Yeah. So the podcast is called the High Vibration Living Podcast. And like we discussed, I love talking about all the ways that we can upgrade and heal our physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental body, because it's like once we got something nailed down, something else comes up. And so I like finding the experts and the tools that can help us constantly just nourish one of those layers of us, because I think we all need to develop our own toolkit to manage this body in this experience so we can get the most out of it. So that's what I try to touch on with the different guests that I bring on, is someone that's an expert in nourishing one of the layers of us.
That's so beautiful. Hey, thank you so much. It was a real joy chatting to you today.
Me too.